Okay, good day. My name is Martin Schweiger. I'm a patent attorney in Singapore and also a powerlifter. And I take you with me on my daily walk. The traffic light turned red when I was right in the middle of the street. Yeah, so as my daily walk, I realized that I have done a lot of recordings already. My first series was when I prepared for the Singapore National Championship in powerlifting, which I won, and I brought home 4 national records. Quite cool. My second series started yesterday because today is the 27th of May 2025. I have about 50 days for preparing for the Asian, African, Pacific Championship in Himeji in Japan. And part of my preparation is this daily walk, 10,000 steps, quite brisk, so that I can still talk and update you. Yeah, I've realized I've recorded more than 50 episodes in my earlier series, and yeah, we'll do a similar thing in the second series. I got input that I should better group my talks into themes, and something like Monday talking about health, Tuesday about fitness, Wednesday about this, but I'm not inclined in doing so because I rather want this raw material with all my insights. I have had an interesting discussion with a health expert yesterday, but not only yesterday. Also, when I was in Germany, I met a doctor who mentioned that when I talked about my plans to establish boot camps for people who also want to get healed from the metabolic syndromes, she got very excited, saying, mentioning black hat problems, like what happens if someone dies during such a boot camp, which can happen because we do all sorts of measurements, and when you work with sick people and you measure or train them, there's always a risk that they fall ill because of a heart attack or even die, especially when we talk about metabolic syndrome. So The second health expert also mentioned just what she said, that most people who are diagnosed with metabolic syndrome are not willing to change their lifestyle. My expectation is that maybe from 20 people, only four are able to change their lifestyle. And the other 16 would just be happy with having enrolled in such a program. And the question is on how to deal with that motivational issue. And my answer is, I would request people to put down a deposit and then request them to measure certain body functions or even intake of food or activities like walking, and just for the case that they are unsuccessful or they don't want, allow them to not comply if a certain share of the deposit is sent to a political party that they do not like. So that would be my approach. Of course, there are other approaches, but I'm wondering whether that would increase the success rate from 20% of the participants to a higher number. But you see where I'm coming from, right? Only very few are able to bring up the willpower for achieving success. And it's not that we all are equipped with the same willpower. Actually, this also is reflected in other areas of our lives. So that willpower and resilience against adversity is a thread that runs through all our lives, and you can see it in every aspect. By the way, the similarity here, because just yesterday I talked with someone who was diagnosed with plaque in the arteries, and they were hoping that plaque is only present in that artery that is measured, but it's not. If you measure plaque in one artery, then you have it in all arteries, essentially, or potentially. So you can reverse that plaque. And also there are 3 different types of plaque, I learned. You discern between fresh plaque that is more liquid, like a pimple, but inside the artery. Then you have calcified plaque, which is not dangerous, obviously. And then there's a third type that I have forgotten. Not important for me, because you wouldn't just change your lifestyle because of a plug measurement and then practice the new lifestyle only until you get a better result. I believe that the changed lifestyle must last forever, until the end of your life. Part of that lifestyle is monitoring, measuring and monitoring your VO₂ max. I've talked about that several times. I believe this is a very central measurement because it gives you information about the health of the mitochondria in your cells. VO₂ max is a measurement of the ability, your body's ability to process oxygen under load. And you know, I'm a mechanical engineer by training and a vehicle repair mechanic, general vehicle repair mechanic from the last century. And I worked, when I went through the ranks, I worked for 6 months in a engine refurbishment company, combustion engine refurbishment company, and they have a test bed, or several test beds for running engines against the artificial load, and then do all measurements, all sorts of measurements with those engines. And one of the measurements is that you measure the oxygen percentage at the intake, which is 19% of the sucked in air, and you measure the oxygen percentage in the exhaust gases. And from the difference and the flow, the total flow of air into the engine, you would know how much fuel is burned and how much fuel is left unburned, for example. And of course, you measure the power of an engine by the mechanical load. You put the brake to the crankshaft and then measure the power that is consumed in that brake. But also, once you have normalized that, or you would say calibrated, you can derive a measurement for the produced power by the amount of oxygen per time that the engine consumes. And I find it quite interesting because the VO₂ max measurement in the human body is exactly the same. You put the body under load, it should be a predetermined load, measure the power produced by the body, then let the body run for a predetermined time, and at the same time measure the oxygen intake and output. And then you do this for a large number of powers, output powers, and individuals, you would see that there's a difference between males and females. And you find a relationship between the three values that allows you to predict the outcome. So a single value. And then you can, if you know that single value for a body, then you can predict the heart rate at a certain load after a predetermined time. Or the load that it does or is able to do at a given heart rate after the predetermined time. And quite interesting, there's a so-called nomogram that you find in the internet. I put the link in the description below for measuring the VO2 max. There are lots of methods, and you don't need a lab that measures the actual input of air and the oxygen. I would say you just take one method, determine your VO2 max, then you decide, is this under average, average, or above average? And then you just try all the VO2 max tests that you can get hold of, and you do, if you just measure your VO2 max, that will improve the VO2 max. So the measurement would influence the measured object. And then decide which method you want to use, and then use this measurement method and improve your VO2 max. You would see VO2 max also depends on your daily form. Yeah, I walk there. Then some VO2 max measurements are immediately, they're too easy because you can only measure up to a certain VO2 max. Like the one that the Oura ring comes with, the Oura ring here, my favorite measurement tool for body functions. So it's about, Oura means walk a certain distance as fast as you can and measure your heartbeat at the end of that walked distance. And there's a limit to that. So, in my case, cranking my VO2 max test consists of, my VO2 max test results consists of two things. The first one is, I just do my daily walk, not run, walk. And the second is, I use always the same gym equipment. In my case, a stepper. I start stepping for 6 minutes for warm up at a lower heart rate of, let's say, 130, 140. And then I crank up my stepping rate to about a heart rate of 150. And I maintain this for 5 minutes. And then I measure the power that I can maintain for that heart rate. And that's quite stable in my case. And when I use it's not important, but I give you an absolute value. When I use the data points, the data sources that are in the internet, my VO2 max is about 60, 58, something like that. It's not important. Important is the change. And that's also why I recommend to do a VO2 max test for all people that suffer from metabolic syndrome, inclusive cancer patients. You need to have a baseline somewhere, and the health of your mitochondria is one of the most important measurement values that you can have. Why do I say so? Because especially for cancer patients, the body would produce energy, ATP, by fermenting glucose in the liquid part of the cells. And that is done even if there's oxygen present. And I found that quite surprising. The man who discovered this was a professor, Dr. Warburg, W-A-R-B-U-R-G, Warburg cycle, and that was already 100 years ago. And you can see that when you measure your VO2 max in a below average value. So I really recommend for everyone, especially for those diagnosed with an illness, a metabolic illness, like cancer, that you measure your VO2 max on a regular basis, because that also will help you to improve treatment. And different from others, I don't recommend against traditional treatments of cancer, because I believe they have the statistical proof that they can work. From what I've heard and seen so far, if you improve your... Isn't that funny? I've never seen that in Singapore. There is this balloon figure that waves people in. I've only seen that in the US before. So that's why I recommend to measure your VO2 max on a regular basis, and also put the measurement value into your health diary, health and fitness diary. That will help you down 20 years down the road when you can compare. Another thing that I recommend is to monitor your blood glucose. And I've came back to monitoring mine with a continuous blood glucose measurement device, because as I had metabolic syndrome, or still have it. My body reacts in a very sensitive way if I eat or drink carbohydrates.
But which?
And wearing that continuous blood glucose meter shows me my body's reaction to what I eat. I've told you, right, that when first day after I came back to Singapore, that was in my last episode, I went for dinner to a Thai restaurant and my blood glucose spiked, and I found out that these people have put sugar into one of the foodstuffs that tells me to be extra careful. It's okay, one spike is okay, but the fact that my spikes are higher than the spikes of a healthy person also tells me that my body is still resistant against insulin. Yeah, I had a very funny experiment done with a good friend of mine in Germany. I haven't seen him for a very long time, so I went to his shop. Actually, he's making and selling handmade shoes. His name is Bertel. He's a very famous person. Bertel. Yeah. So, and I showed him. I took my blood glucose measurement pricking equipment with me. So what I did is I measured my blood glucose before lunch when I was in fasting mode. It was very low, something like 5.8 or 9 or so. And then we had a nice Bavarian meal with a lot of roast, pork roast, veal roast, chicken roast, duck roast, and it came with the Bavarian dumplings made from, the one sort is made from potatoes, so very starchy, and the other is made from dry bread rolls. We call them Semmeln or Brötchen, little breads, and is made from wheat meal, mostly. So, and then 1 hour, 20 minutes after, I forgot, we also had cake. The restaurant there sells wonderful cake with lots of cream, very sweet, and fruits. And 1 hour, 20 minutes after we started to eat, having lunch, I measured again my blood glucose and his blood glucose. And while we had initially, before we had the meal, the same blood glucose value of about 5.8 or 6 point whatever, 0, something like that. After 1 hour, 20 minutes, my blood glucose was shooting up to a value of 11, while his blood glucose was in the 8-ish area. And that shows me that my body needs to produce much more insulin. Wrong. my body has difficulties with driving blood glucose into the cells, and that is done by issuing insulin. And it works because after another hour or so, my blood glucose came back to normal, to 6.0, especially because we had a very nice walk. But that also shows me that much more insulin is required because does it really show me that much more insulin? No, I'm assuming that much more insulin is required. Actually, I would need to measure it, but measuring insulin is difficult. There is no instant and continuous way to measure the blood insulin. I would love to do, but I haven't encountered a method yet. If that is out, that will change our lives, because then we can really say whether we have a healthy metabolism or not. Actually, I should look for that method more. Anyway, there is one method that shows you whether your body is at an early stage of insulin resistance. And because you need to know, when you're in an early stage of insulin resistance, measuring your blood glucose doesn't tell you anything. Because what you measure is that your blood glucose levels are normal. And the doctor would tell you that your blood glucose is okay, you're healthy. But he doesn't know that the insulin resistance has already started in your body, but it's not visible because your body is able to produce enough insulin to keep the blood glucose at normal levels, even long time. There's this value HB1 something, A5 maybe or so. Yeah, that is a long-term measurement. And what I can tell you is that my blood glucose when fasting are very normal. But what I see is that my blood glucose level shoots through the roof when I eat carbohydrates. And there's a test that can detect that early, and it's called HOMA-IR, HOMA minus IR. And that's an early indicator, and it is done in a lab. So you take your fasting insulin value and the fasting glucose value and you multiply them. And then you divide it by a certain calibration constant. You can look it up. And if your value is above a certain threshold, it means that your body is producing more than a normal amount of insulin to drive blood glucose into your cells. And that's where you should really become alerted and adopt a healthy lifestyle. Yeah. But I must be honest, Yeah, I must be honest. If you had told me before I had my accident, my accident, I slipped in a water puddle in a staircase and I ripped my quadriceps tendon on the left leg 100%, followed by a surgery, followed by metabolic syndrome. And that accident happened one day after I was invited to the World Championship in powerlifting. And I was quite successful at the time. I had 4 national records and my weight class was super heavyweight. My body weight was 132, 133 kg. If you had told me the day before that accident that I should work on my insulin resistance, my body's insulin resistance, I would have declared you nuts, because I thought, hey, I'm healthy, well, it's really hot today. That's why I brought my towel. I would have told you, go away. I love my style. When someone asked me, what supplements are you taking? I answered, jokingly, pork knuckle, sausages and beer. Which was essentially right. So, as compared with today, my lifestyle was really unhealthy. If you ask a powerlifter in the heavyweight class about walking, then he would answer, no cardio, no cardio. Very different from today. That is also why when after the surgery of my quadriceps tendon recovered, I just continued the same lifestyle, believing that my strength account would balance out the lack of mobility. It didn't. After 4 months, I was close to a heart attack, probably. Because the doctor told me, hey Martin, I have your blood picture. I usually see that only from people that have had a heart attack before. And I said, huh, what? I said, that was really a warning shot. It was 4 months after the surgery, or 5 months. Anyway, so my point is this. If you had told me, based on the HOMA IR measurement, that before that accident I should address my insulin resistance, I would not have followed. And only this bad news made me change my lifestyle. So, 2 pints of beer, $18. See, my friend has sold his Italian restaurant to an Indian group, and they sell beer. So bad that I don't drink beer anymore because of the thing. Then there's a set lunch or promotion, quite cheap. Here is my favorite sake restaurant, Wang Da Fu. Recommended. So, when I look back, I must say I'm really grateful for the accident that I had with my knee and the surgery. I mean, there were some damages, but that is only money that can be paid, right? And I'm weaker than before. It's also because I need to lose weight. And if you weigh less, then you can lift less. Especially when you're already in the top-notch 0.1% of athletes worldwide, as I was. So now for me, the challenge is lose more weight, go down to the 93 kg weight class. I'm maybe 10 kg away from that. And that's what my journey is about now. And we will see where this goes. Just one last thing. I have a product review. And the product review is about the continuous glucose meters. This is the pickup area of a local school. Is it primary or secondary? I don't know. Probably primary. So the parents' weight is now 130 for the kids to be picked up, and also the maids who do that. That's Singapore. So the continuous glucose meters. I have tried 3 different types so far, brands. I started with a Abbott Freestyle Libre. It was not the latest version, but the one that is sold in Singapore, and it doesn't come with Bluetooth connector, but with a, you need to somehow connect it with a NFC feature of your mobile phone, and it would read in the data. It worked, actually worked very well, and but it's not really online in a sense. It's continuous measurement, but the data transfer is only done as often as you update the data with your phone. That was good for the start, because if you're not administering the extra insulin, by the way, what a nonsense. giving patients extra insulin, because if you don't have diabetes 1 where the gland for your body that produces insulin is damaged, you don't need extra insulin. All the diabetes 2 patients and 3, diabetes 3 should not administer extra insulin because that worsens their situation. Insulin is a hormone. I would say don't apply extra hormones to your body unless it's really necessary from a mechanical engineer's point of view. There's someone making noise behind me. Let him pass. Interesting, huh? Okay. So, the Abbott Freestyle Libre is quite expensive. I believe one set of 2 weeks costs $80, $90 or so. There are cheaper ones around, like the Sinocare from China. Much cheaper, costs something like $20 or $30 for 2 weeks. Oh, yes, of course, it comes with some difficulties. You need to be able to read Chinese. So, because the app that it comes with is in Chinese language, but that can be done, right? You can learn the most important things in Chinese. It's a bit clumsy. The mechanical quality of the applicator is not as good as the Abbott one. Then the measurement value has an offset, so that means that you need to calibrate your Sinocare continuous blood glucose meter with a finger pricking method. Can be done, and not an issue. I mean, again, right? The offset is quite stable over time, and the quality of the sensor in general is good. You need to glue it with an extra plaster to your body because it falls off more easily. I believe the same applies also to the Abbott one. I've lost my first Abbott sensor and it was replaced for free. The Sinocare people wouldn't do that. If you lose your sensor, you buy a new one. So ultimately, I lost my Abbott after 2 weeks or 12 days, and I got a new one. So with my $90 or so, actually it was a free trial and therefore also cheaper, I got for almost a month. It was not expensive, I must say. But then no Bluetooth. The Sinocare has Bluetooth. Quite cool feature. And yeah, so I tried a third one, which is the OTTAI, continuous blood glucose meter, OTTAI, OTTAI. And that one has a very good applicator, very good. It also comes with Bluetooth. It's not expensive, something like $30 for 2 weeks. But I bought 3 of them because I believe in statistics, and testing one blood glucose meter doesn't say anything. So after my third OTTAI is now 8 days old, and I can tell you that the earlier 2 OTTAIs never lived longer than maybe 10 days or 12 maximum. So the price is a bit higher, or is it the same as the Sinocare? But the actual price is higher because the lifespan is not as promised. And also, you would see the OTI would over time degrade, which means it shows measurement values that are too low. So when I put my OTI, the last OTI 8 days ago, the measurement value was okay, but after 1 day it went down. It would still show the spikes of your blood sugar. That's why I still find them useful. You know, I use the continuous blood glucose monitor for determining what food spikes my blood sugar and how much and how strong. So I don't take insulin. That means that actually it doesn't really matter what is the absolute measurement value. But if the thing stops measuring, then that's it, and I need a new one, and I will not buy OTI CGMs anymore. I would say for the near future. Maybe in a year or two I try them again, because it cannot be that I'm the only one who's complaining. The Sinocare, I just bought 3 of them, and I'm waiting for them to arrive. So again, I believe from a price value position, the Sinocare is really the best. For us diabetes resistance fighters. That may be different if you really depend on a measurement for administering insulin, if you're diabetes 1 patient. Yeah. So I'm at the end of my long list. I don't know how many steps I walked. The battery of my what is it? Nimble or whatever stick, the one that moves the mobile phone so that my face is in the center, is getting weak. You see, the most important thing when you improve your metabolic syndrome is to get a regular habit of doing something for your body. In my case, I would say the most important change of life that I've made is this daily walk under the midday sun, half an hour, 1 hour, counting the steps over time. And yeah, I'm 1.5 years into that habit, and I must say this is my plan for the rest of my life. That's why I don't really like traveling so much. To get this habit into practice when you're traveling is difficult, because traveling requires so much extra time for organizing your life that you don't need when you are in your daily normal life. And that extra time I'm using for my daily walk. I also understand if people have so much on their plate, work, family, studies, then requirements from social groups such as churches, that it's very difficult to plan in the extra time for your body. But I would stress that this should not be a state that your daily commitments to other people would override the requirements of your body. And the older we get, the more do we need to look into this actively. So yeah, this probably also helps me with sorting out the priorities in my life. It's a valuable insight that I gained. As you know, I was for 6 weeks or 5 weeks in Europe, and all what I did was just a bit of walking and intermittent fasting. That was not bad, because I lost about 3 kg body weight during that time. And but my guess is the loss of weight was more due to muscle mass and not due to fat. But I will find out tomorrow, Tuesday, and following, not today, Tuesday and tomorrow, I'm fasting. Today water fasting, which means only water, tea and coffee. And tomorrow dry fasting, probably until 8ish or 9 p.m. And after that, step on the scale, measure body weight and composition, means muscle mass and fat in the various bodies, and that would show me what has happened. Thank you and goodbye.